Have you ever tried to run a committee? Are you a second counselor who has to make sure that everything is running smoothly? Maybe you're a new committee chairman and you've just been told that you need to deliver incredible results for the most important committee that the chapter has. Well, the good news is that your chapter committees are essentially work teams that are formed to accomplish certain goals. These are done across industry, multiple businesses. So the same professional tips that we use in our day-to-day alumni business lives, you can apply to your chapter committees. Hi, my name is Matt Smith. I'm a former chapter director in Province Archon with Sigma Pi, and I'm a certified project management professional who works and develops teams on a regular basis to achieve goals and success. Today, I'm going to talk to you about some of the basic things that you can do in any committee structure that help set you up for better success. So the golden rule of teams is really simple. In fact, it's only two words. It depends. There are very few situations that we face as leaders which are cut and dry. Most things are not black and white, and we usually operate within the grays. It's in these situations that we do our best to evaluate the situation and make the best decision we can with the information that's available. So don't assume that anything is a one size fits all. Just because it worked at another chapter doesn't mean it necessarily works with yours. You have to think about what it is because it always depends on the context in which you're in. So let's talk about a common axiom. Success depends on a strong leader. Now, generally speaking, this is often a very true statement. What does it mean to be a strong leader? Research using a tool called the Team Diagnostic Survey has found that you can apply a general rule called the 60-30-10 rule. And this is used for coaching teams and indicating where your energy goes as a team leader to generate the best amount of success. What are the indicators? The most energy goes into this area to generate successful teams. If you're interested in this topic and you want to read more about it, I'd recommend going to 6teamconditions.com and looking at any of the articles by Dr. Ruth Wegman of Harvard University, one of the researchers who developed the Team Diagnostic Survey. So what is this 60-30-10 rule and how can we use it to make our committees more successful? Well, what the research has found is that the most powerful thing you can do to foster an effective collaborative working environment and to make sure your committee is set up for success is to set it up for success. Create the conditions that help the members competently manage themselves. Again, this is kind of a trick because we often think like the leader is going to come in and the leader is going to lead and they're going to take care of everything and they're going to do all of this. But the best leaders set up their work areas, set up their teams to be able to produce without the leader standing there with them. This is setting the stage for success. And this is going to account for about 60% of your likely return as a leader for your committee. 60% is just the prep work before your committee even starts doing any actual work. The second most powerful thing that you can do is to launch the team well. Teams that have a clear understanding or a high level of agreement, you'll hear that in some of the other sessions, a high level of agreement on their goals and objectives will simply outperform those teams that do not have this same understanding. In the project management world, we call this a project kickoff. This is a time to bring everyone together, to set yourself out as the committee chairman, to establish the authority, establish the roles and responsibilities, who's going to do what, make sure everyone's on the same page, get buy-in around what the committee goals are, and build excitement for what you're trying to do. If everyone goes into it excited, it's going to be a little bit better. So this project kickoff, this team launch, is about 30% of your likely success. So you're at 60 and 30%, there's not a lot left. What else do we do as a leader? Well, the rest of that plays out in the longest period of the project over the full lifespan of the project or the committee. And that's where leadership becomes hands-on teaching and coaching and risk mitigation and all of these things that we do. That accounts for 10% of the overall success. So make sure you have the right conditions set, you have your effective communication and kickoff ready to go, and then also make sure that you're staying on top of things as they go through. That's going to be your full 100% of what you can do for your results. Bigger is better. We've often heard this: one head, one idea. Two heads is better than one. Three heads is better than two. Have you ever heard someone say recruitment is everyone's responsibility? Have you ever heard the logic that if it's so important, shouldn't we have the whole chapter on it? This happens a lot in our chapters, especially in our smaller chapters. The reality is that excessive size is one of the most common and also one of the worst impediments to effective collaboration. The larger the group, the higher the likelihood of social loafing, sometimes called free riding, and the more effort it takes to keep member activities coordinated. Small teams are just more efficient and far less frustrating. Now, you may have heard of being agile or agile development or agile organizations or agile projects or any of these things. Agile is a big industry buzzword. One of the frequently used agile methodologies is called Scrum. And I personally think Scrum can adapt to the fraternity and chapter operations pretty well. If you're interested in more information about Scrum as a full methodology, take a look at the information on scrum.org or scrumalliance.org. Now, one of the tenets of Scrum is an appropriate development team size, and this works out for our committees as well. 3 to 9 people is going to be your ideal. Any less, and you don't have a real committee. Any more, and the communication starts to become burdensome, complex. It's harder to get all the people on the same page because you have too many people. Now, if you have a large chapter membership, you're saying to yourself, well, how do I manage this if I've got 100 plus members? That's when your committees can use subcommittees. Social doesn't have to be 30 people trying to figure out how to do everything. It could be a subcommittee for mixers, a subcommittee for formal, for the dance marathon team, etc. And each of those 3 to 9 people groups develops and brings to fruition one of your social events. Technology makes communication easier. Now, as an IT professional, technology is very important. It makes our lives better. It does make a lot of things easier. It makes things faster. And a lot of times it's just great. Sometimes it's not. Very often technology becomes a crutch where we don't realize that we're communicating poorly because we're communicating in what's easiest. So an email with minutes from the chapter can hit all the brothers, even if they weren't there. That's great. Instagram lets you share your events with all potential new members. It's great. But if you're trying to do problem solving, or you're trying to brainstorm ideas, or you're trying to really get a better pulse of the chapter, you're probably not going to get that in some of those online or technical mediums. The reality is, before the 2020 pandemic, our fraternity business was all done in person. Face-to-face meetings primarily, either at the house or a room on campus or the apartment down the street. Our brothers just got together at Duffy's on 50-cent wing night, and that's where the committee did their work. We were used to the ideal face-to-face. Now, most of us operate in a COVID-restricted or remote kind of a setting. This creates some problems and some disadvantages that we just have to be mindful of. Communication is the lifeblood of a successful organization. So let's take a quick second to look at communication as a process so we can understand kind of how communication works. So if you look at this process map of communication, you can see that there are several steps, and we could spend a significant amount of time going over all of these, but we're just going to focus on transmission and feedback. Transmission is the medium in which your message is communicated. It could be a verbal face-to-face, it could be a on-the-phone conversation, it could be a formal chapter meeting, it could be a sign you post up by the door, it could be an Instagram, a group meet, an email, any of these things. Feedback is what you get from the person receiving your message. Feedback could be simply saying, yes, I'll do that, or no, I can't attend that meeting next week. It could be a question like, I have no idea what you mean when you say it has to be a top-notch rush event. Or, you said that my report is due, but I don't actually know when it's due. So an easy thing for you to do when you're communicating, especially for second counselors and committee chairmen, ask yourself, do I need feedback? Let that be the first question that you ask to decide whether or not you communicate asynchronously or send an email, things like that, that are just one-way communication, or if you need a meeting or you need a face-to-face, do you need a Zoom? We don't want to over-Zoom each other. We have done so many online meetings at this point. So figure out, do I need feedback? Is this a conversation that we have to have? If not, that meeting could have been an email. That's going to save you a lot of time. Cardinal rule, meetings are necessary. Nobody wants more than are absolutely necessary. When you're thinking of the feedback, think about whether or not it's a charged or a emotional idea, because the more emotional brothers may get about a topic, the more you want to have that face-to-face so that you can get the nonverbal body language as you're talking through. If you do things in chats or group me's, that could be great, but you lose a lot of context and you might have some struggles in getting clear messaging across to people, especially if they start arguing or disagreeing and it's not sure if it's a healthy disagreement or not. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Number of global organizations that rely heavily on distributed teams, even before the pandemic, found that it's well worth taking the time and expense to get members together and to get them face to face. So remember, if you're having struggles with communication, sometimes you just need a good face to face opportunity. And if you can only do that on Zoom, Zoom is better than not doing anything face to face. You get that team launched, make sure it's face to face. Again, launching that team, that's 30% of your opportunity for success as a team leader. So make sure that opportunity is face to face. Teams should get along. Ideally, everyone on the team clicks and works fantastically. Everyone pulls together, everyone supports one another. You know, it's like a well-oiled machine and it's just awesome. Reality? No, it doesn't always work that way. Conflict always happens in your teams. It will definitely happen in your committees. Most conflict will happen within a team, and most of it's healthy. Most of it's great. Disagreements on ideas lead to discussion, leads to better ideas. That stirs up innovation and it stirs all sorts of great creative juices when we have healthy managed conflict. Sometimes the conflict's unhealthy. Sometimes it's more personal. Sometimes it's coming from a very emotional place. Sometimes it's spinning out in the meeting and it has nothing to do with the meeting or the people in it. It's just something that happened to them at home and now they brought it in, and we've got to, just as you know, the managers or the leaders of this meeting, make sure that it doesn't sidetrack and derail us. This is even more difficult with fraternities. Why? Because these are not just your coworkers that you see from 9 to 5. These are your brothers. These are your roommates. These are the people you socialize with. You might see this person like 9 hours a day, every single day. And then, you know, you're telling them, turn out the light. I got to go to sleep. I got a test tomorrow. You have so much more interaction with your brothers that it's really difficult sometimes to separate those personal and those work problems, those committee problems. So you can use the general Pareto principle, 80-20. About 80% of the conflict that your committees are going to have is natural, healthy conflict. You want to let it play out, let the conversations go. But that 20%, that unhealthy, that's what you want to stop. You don't want to let people have, you know, essentially a power struggle in your committee over, you know, who's going to do the dishes or something that's completely irrelevant. Sometimes it won't even play out like in the words. You won't even know what they're arguing about. But if your gut tells you that this is something else, if your gut tells you that I think this is a problem because of the party last week, or someone didn't do the dishes, or it's because he's dating his ex-girlfriend, if you get that gut feeling, go with it, shut down that conversation, regroup the meeting another time, move on to another topic, and then talk to those guys outside of that meeting to see if you can help them resolve that situation. There's no hard and fast rule on how to know if it's a personal or an emotional thing, or if it's a true work disagreement. You just got to go with your instinct on that and trust your gut, trust your instincts. Adding more people solves problems faster. Seems pretty logical. Have you ever heard statements like, we need recruitment now, so I'll add more guys to the committee. You know, we have to get things going. Or Jason just comes back from mid-year leadership conference and he's got a bunch of ideas. So let's drop them in the social committee and we'll get all the ideas that he got from other chapters. You know, Bob's doing great at running philanthropy. So we'll take the struggling recruitment and we'll move Bob over to recruitment and he'll just run it. And it's going to be great because he was great at philanthropy. So he should be just great with this team, right? It's all the same. Problem is, all of our teams and our committees have life cycles of development. When we change our committees on a semester or yearly basis, and for some of us in more more frequent cases, we trigger the beginning of the team formation process. Every person that we add, every person that we remove changes that team dynamic. And every time the team has to reset, it has to learn itself a little bit more. Americans are among the best in the world at reorganization, and we're, org chart masters, we're structural masters. We do this fantastically well, but it can also mean that we go to that to solve our problems rather than get down to the root issue. We try and top down solve problems by moving managers around or moving committee chairmen around. That's not always going to be the fastest way to get your committees to work better. So the Tuckman model of team development is one that I like to suggest we use. It's a very easy concept to apply to our committees. Tuckman's research showed that teams have basically four phases. There's a forming stage, a storming, a norming, and a performing. Now in the forming stage, this is when everyone is polite and nice and a bit excited. It's at the beginning of the committee, often the start of the semester. We're getting together, we're understanding what we're doing, we're going to do X amount of events, we're setting our goals. It's a critical point. This is where that kickoff happens. This is where we're setting that stage, we're having that event. This is a very important part. Then we move into storming, and every team does this. Storming is when people start to disagree about how to accomplish our goals. They might all be on the same page with the goals, but they don't necessarily always think we need to do X, Y, and Z to get there. Conflict over ideas will start to happen. People will start testing the waters to find out who's really in charge, who has more influence, who's going to just go with the flow. Your alpha personalities are going to start to clash and step in. Many teams falter and fail in this stage, and they work against each other instead of working with one another. And this is particularly true with chapters. Norming is when we start dealing with the conflicts quickly and in a healthy way. The chair starts to get recognized and respected as the leader. The group is operating with that shared understanding. We've all respecting one another's roles and responsibilities. There's that high level of agreement is now in place, and that understanding is shared amongst everyone on the committee. Respect is kind of the key operational term here. You'll start to see the returns on your fruits of your labor, and all of the energy is going to be paying out in this norming stage. It's important to remember, if you drop new committee chairmen in, they've got to go through forming and storming before they can start getting return on the results. So if you have to have something that's turned around in 10 days, dropping a new chair may be what you have to do, but it might also not be the best option for a quick turnaround. So it's just something to think about as you're making those decisions. And then performing is that desired state where the team cooperates and functions efficiently, often like a single well-oiled machine. Teamwork happens over time. Very rarely does that just happen. Great teamwork usually comes over time, but through careful engineering. Good leaders have done things to build the situations that allow teams to thrive. Over the years, I've heard people suggest that struggling teams just needed more time and that they'll figure it out eventually. My problem with this line of thought is that it shifts all the accountability for making sure the team is successful and making sure that good teamwork starts to happen down to the team. And they're already doing the work. Don't push that accountability down to your brothers. Second counselors and committee chairs need to make sure they take the accountability onto themselves to stack the deck. Make sure that your teams, that your committees get the best hand you can possibly give them so they can be as successful as they can be. Remember that 60-30-10 rule? 60% of your chances for a good return from your committee is that preparation work, setting the stage for success, creating the conditions for your team to thrive. That's the foundation. You can get that before the team is created. When we just assign names to committees, we say, here's the list of who's going to be doing what, and that's it. That's all the second counselor's done. We're just surviving. Don't just set names. Don't just pick a chair. Don't just say report back when you have a plan for what's going to happen this semester. When you plan for success, you're more likely to have success. Ask yourself all sorts of questions well before the committee starts working. What are the goals? Are they clear? Is there high agreement? Do we have high agreement with the e-board that this is what these committees should do? Is the second counselor in the chair? Are we on the same page? What are the tasks? Who's going to do those tasks? Do we need everyone on the committee? Is everyone on the committee that we need on that committee? Have we onboarded them? Did we get the information from the seniors before they graduated? Have they met with other committee chairs? Does everyone understand how things happen here? Do they understand our chapter process for getting money? Do they understand how to get budget from our third counselor? Do they know what our campus resources are and how to reserve a room on campus or to post an event in the union board activity flyer? Do they know how things happen here? The best leaders remove as many of the obstacles that could impede the team's ability to quickly move to that performing state. The nice thing, once you write down the plan and you have it clear, you can repeat it. You can continue to modify it, update it, and have success year after year after year.